Hmm. Hey, we are streaming. We are back for another module. This time we're going to start turning our attention into cases. So we're finally getting into doing the main point of this entire class. But before that, a quick little lecture. The things that I'm going to cover change without notice. So just as with anything in the world of IT, things get outdated real quick and replaced by others. So don't be surprised if you try to search for some of these things and they're no longer available. This lecture covers things like working undercover, a couple of cases, like really quick talk about cases, a little bit about virtual currencies, and some searching of stuff. A undercover investigation is the process used to acquire information without the individual or the suspect knowing the true identity of the investigator. There are background checks that build a profile through reconnaissance methods online. There's surveillance, where detectives begin monitoring the suspect's residence, movements, daily routine, chat rooms, user group activities, and build a behavioral profile. Investigators plan how detectives will record the activities, request warrants for wiretaps, and plan how the interaction between the detective and the suspect will occur. And then you have the sting operation, designed to catch the criminal in the act of committing or planning to commit a crime. To generate an identity, it's not difficult at all. It's actually called a sock puppet. That's the actual term for an underground identity or undercover identity. In order to perform recon on a suspect or use in a sting operation. Things like the fake name generator do a lot of the legwork. The site "this person does not exist" is another useful tool for building a persona. Other useful tools include email, and there's lots of them like Gmail, Yahoo, Proton, Tutanota. There's lots of ways to send a text message from a different phone number through apps, or just use a burner phone. Finance, people use Bitcoin Laundry, Coin ATM Radar, One Vanilla, PayPal. Many different virtual private networks like Proton VPN, NordVPN, TailOS. They can mask their identity with tools like Bluff My Call, Spoof Card, Spy Dialer, and using tons of proxies. Law enforcement can also use something called LEAP, the Local Number Portability Enhanced Analytical Program, to try to catch criminals who try to evade investigation by switching phone carriers or use tools like reverse lookups. Law enforcement requires a wiretap to record phone conversations. The laws will vary by state, whether this could be admitted as evidence and which parties must consent. The World Wide Web, also known as the Clear Web, is easy to use with any traditional browser. There's also the unindexed part of the web, which is referred to as the dark web, an encrypted network that utilizes the public internet. There are a tremendous amount of resources that always change for finding open source intelligence. The link I give you in the lecture notes gives you one place. I took a snapshot of it once here. But like I said, things change. Some of these tools may no longer be available anymore. So you'll have to do some research. Here's the Onion router, or Tor. A free open source, an open network that allows users to surf anonymously. Anyone can download the Tor browser bundle or connect through proxies on the Tor network. Any site that is hosted on Tor is not available or accessible through the ClearNet. It can be problematic for investigators because identities are obfuscated and site locations tend to be unknown. Tor sites are known to conduct criminal activities and a breeding ground for malware, such as the infamous Silk Road. Although it's difficult to determine the identities of users online, not impossible, just difficult. Upon seizure of a computer, law enforcement can gather evidence about a user's activity, retrieving browser history from RAM, the Hibernate file, or swap. The easiest search string would be to search for anything that's .onion. Tails, the amnesic incognito live system, is a live Linux OS that provides anonymity for users. But it's not all foolproof, because it's possible to wiretap the nodes that you connect to. It's possible to see ISP traffic. There are ways around. A little less known is the Invisible Internet Project. It was similar to Tor. Uses public-private key encryption with websites hosted anonymously. On a suspect's computer, if you found router.config, then it would have information about the I2P connectivity. There's also Freenet, which was released in 2000, a peer-to-peer stored encryption information network. The more that the user would give over hard disk space, the faster the connection would work. There's also Secure Drop, an open submission system funded by Freedom of the Press Foundation, which allowed whistleblowers to anonymously connect with journalists. This is the infamous Silk Road marketplace that facilitated criminals to sell drugs, counterfeit documents, and other illegal items anonymously to consumers using Bitcoin. This combination virtually left no paper trail. It was eventually taken down by FBI and Homeland Security. But as usual, if one goes down, a bunch more pop up. There was a bunch of others like Playpen, a marketplace to distribute sexually explicit images of minors. In that case, 25 producers of child porn were prosecuted, 51 abusers were prosecuted, 55 children were successfully identified or rescued in the US and internationally. It took about 350 arrests in the US and 548 internationally. It was a big controversial because the FBI was in control of the server for 2 weeks, installing malware onto computers that visited the site. The federal prosecutor who was on that case chose to dismiss it rather than disclose whether the FBI actually did or didn't have control over it for 2 weeks. Because in the case, you have to show what you did. And the government wasn't really jumping to say how they did it. Operation Bayonet. In 2017, a multinational law enforcement operation between Homeland Security, FBI, Europol, shut down two of the most notorious marketplaces, Alphabay and Hansa. The creator of Alphabay was arrested but never put on trial because he died in his cell. The assets totaling $23 million were found. In the case of the second, Hansa, a security researcher found a development version of the marketplace that had old IRC chat logs detailing all the information from the admins. A little bit about virtual currencies. Fiat currency is legal tender backed by government, like the dollar or the euro. Virtual currencies are non-state sponsored currencies that are sent from one device to another and is only transferred once an algorithm is solved by a middleman or a miner. A public ledger of transactions assures the integrity of those transactions. Not all virtual currencies are cryptocurrencies, like Second Life, who uses Linden dollars. Virtual currencies carry tax consequences in different jurisdictions, such as in the US through the IRS, where a Bitcoin miner is considered a money service business. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, decentralized peer-to-peer virtual currency. It's not illegal in the US and can be used for nefarious anonymous transactions. The currency uses Bitcoin wallet to store the currency, with many to choose from and are encrypted with SHA-256 with a public and private key. Investigators will typically search for a wallet.dat on a suspect's device. A Bitcoin miner, like I said, solves a mathematical problem requiring tremendous computing power before forwarding the Bitcoin currency to the recipient. In return, the miner will receive a small percentage of the Bitcoin for solving the algorithm. The blockchain is the electronic public ledger that keeps track of all Bitcoin transactions or blocks. Although publicly visible, determining who is responsible for each transaction is a bit problematic without knowing the date and time of the transaction and knowing the identities of the people. Each block can also be a combination of user transactions. Criminals tend to use services like Bitcoin Tumbler to mix up their transactions with others or convert one cryptocurrency to another. Again, not to say that it's not impossible, because people have been caught in recent history. So don't think that just by using Bitcoin, you're completely anonymous, because that's not exactly true. Switching gears to website evidence. Since websites change their content continuously, investigators need to have the tools on hand to get information from old versions of sites. Two places could be things like the Wayback Machine, who provides historical snapshots of a website. There's also statistics that you can get from a site through a tool called Netcraft. If they make their site on GitHub, you can look at the Git commits. When doing things like background searches on a suspect, you need to use online recon tools. Many websites provide basic information on individuals. Most make their money by allowing you to see more extensive information under a premium service. As I said, these will change. So they may have been up one day and gone the next. So I have a number of tools for finding personal information, personal interests in groups, instant messaging, social media, using things like internet protocols, for example, fingerprinting organizations with collected archives, or FOCA, is a tool that uses metadata hidden within documents to locate similar ones across the web. Helps you find any leaked documents or documents from the same author. Could also use things like router forensics, looking at routers RAM. Law enforcement, since 9/11, has teamed up with national teams to get information quickly with less bureaucracy. Some of the centers that they have are the Real-Time Crime Center in New York, the Homeland Security Information Network State and Local Intelligence Community Interest, Homeland Security Data Network, National Counterterrorism Center, National Crime Information Center, and Interpol. With online crime, we have identity theft, which could happen without the need to know a user's password. With enough open source intelligence, a password can be reset with information gathered from websites mentioned above. Multi-factor authentication is your way to mitigate this. Credit cards for sale is an ongoing global issue. As devices with information are captured, data stolen and sold on the dark web with malware, of course. Electronic medical record. These are actually more valuable than Social Security. For a time, Social Security numbers ran $1 each versus medical records ran $20 on the black market. This is because the electronic medical records contain more PII, more personally identifiable information, than that can be used for a larger range of fraudulent activity. Counter-proliferation refers to efforts to prevent the export of weapons and proprietary technology to foreign nations or terrorist groups through U.S. customs, shipping vessels, and more. Cyberbullying is also among this list. Prosecutors rely heavily on digital evidence from online sources from the victim and the suspect's computer, along with web service providers. And of course, social media. Online criminal activity is not simply motivated by money or a challenge of wits. There's also religious propaganda, politically charged motives, and state-sponsored attacks. Investigators must capture online content in real time or retroactively with as many methods as possible, such as screen captures, video, viewing cookies, Windows registry, and web browsers, along with anything that's in RAM and temporarily stored. Any questions? Cool. So like I said at the beginning, we are moving right along into your first case this week. Hooray. Well, actually, there's two things to do this week. The first is to see what happens when you install Tor browser. Write a little report on what you see, like what's different between your regular browsing and dark web. What are some similarities? Can you find 3 ClearNet websites that have a dark web sister? Find 3 not illegal, inaccessible sites that are in the dark web. And if you run something like Wireshark, T-Shark, TCP dump, while you're on the Tor network, what do you see? Any questions on this report? I have no problem if you use your Windows server on GCP and do this whole thing through that. That'd be a very easy way of getting it done. I mean, I would. Just because I don't want to install anything that I don't necessarily want to keep on my local machine. I mean, Wireshark picks up any traffic on the interface you select. So you will have to do some filtering. I don't necessarily think you need to use a VPN. I think that's a little overkill for this simple assignment. If I were you, the way that I would go about doing this is with a Windows server in GCP, install the Tor browser, install Wireshark, have it run while I surf the dark web. That way you can answer this last question. It's not meant to be a super challenging assignment. Well, the question, Shannon, is to see if that's true. Would you see nothing but encrypted traffic? Or can you make out what's happening? For example, are the headers in the packets for Tor completely readable, that you can determine what's happening? Well, Giovanni, before we can even answer, does Web 3.0 play a role, does something like the Tor network even use Web 3.0? They might not. But again, not meant to be a super crazy, super long report. The thing that is going to take your time, that I do suggest spending time on, is the following. Your first actual case. So you know what site the case files are at. If you listen to my suggestion about downloading them ahead of time, well, you should already have it then. So all you need to do now is just extract it. But here is your case. The city of New Orleans passed a law in 2004 making the possession of 9 or more unique Rhino images a serious crime. The network admin recently alerted police when the instance of Rhinovore flagged illegal Rhino traffic. The evidence in the case includes a computer and a USB seized from one of the labs, The computer had no hard drive. The USB key was imaged. So this is that. There are also 3 network traces. These 3. Oops. These 3. So these 3 files are accessible in Wireshark. Just because it says .log doesn't necessarily mean you open up in a log file viewer. So when you look at these 3, use Wireshark. When you look at this one, you can use Autopsy. You are hunting down at least 9 photos. You are also answering these questions. Now, this is in the form of a quiz. Just like the binary games, don't start the quiz until you have all the answers. I will repeat. Just like binary games, do not start the quiz until you have the answers to these questions. These are the questions that will show up in the quiz. It's not going to be one of those gotcha quizzes where there's an extra question that you weren't ready for. So you're not going to be in for a surprise. You will be in for a surprise if you don't listen to what I'm telling you. So one more time, open these 3 in Wireshark. This at least in Autopsy. Don't start the quiz until you have the answers to all of these. And this is how I'll know who paid attention and who didn't. As usual, you are more than welcome to work together, to collaborate. I highly encourage you to work together, to utilize Discord, make, I believe you are able to make threads and chat with each other as you solve this case. Highly, highly encourage it. Any questions? Seeing none, I'm going to stop the recording so we don't have dead air.